Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner.
In our top story, Israeli Defense Forces launched a major operation on the border with Lebanon. This comes just days after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo held urgent talks in Brussels to discuss Iran's aggression in the region. The objective of the mission, dubbed Operation Northern Shield, is to dismantle a network of cross-border attack tunnels built by the Iranian-backed Hezbollah terror group. IDF spokesman Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus confirmed that a number of these terror tunnels penetrated Israeli territory and that Jerusalem views this action as a flagrant violation of Israeli sovereignty.
Here we go again. The United Nations has approved 6 more resolutions condemning Israel. In yet another sickening display of its anti-Israel obsession, the world body used the platform of the General Assembly to demonize the Jewish state. One of the measures disavowed Israel's sovereignty in its capital, Jerusalem. 2 others denied Jewish and Christian ties to the Temple Mount and omitted the connection both faiths have held with the holy site for thousands of years through referencing it solely by its Arabic name. U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman slammed the biased actions and said that the United Nations cannot vote away the fact that Jerusalem is the ancient and modern capital of Israel.
Tehran continues to threaten the free world and flaunt its disregard of the nuclear agreement. The hardline Islamic Republic has violated a UN resolution by test-firing some of its medium-range ballistic missiles, which are capable of carrying multiple atomic warheads. These rockets are able to reach targets anywhere in the Middle East as well as parts of Europe. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the recent tests violate the nuclear accord, which bans Tehran from testing missiles capable of delivering ballistic or nuclear payloads. Pompeo called on world powers to unite and prevent the rogue Islamic State from further developing advanced weapons capabilities. He said Iran's missile testing and proliferation is growing, and we are accumulating the risk of escalation in the region if we fail to restore deterrence.
Israeli leaders lamented the passing of former U.S. President George Herbert Walker Bush. Both Israeli President Reuven Rivlin and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu eulogized the former world leader and brought to light some of his lesser-known efforts to help the Jewish people. Netanyahu said that Israel will always remember his commitment to the Jewish state's security, his important contribution to the liberation of Soviet Jewry, and his efforts to achieve peace in the Middle East at the Madrid conference. President Rivlin praised the 41st president as an American hero who knew how to distinguish between good and evil and how to build strong regional coalitions against cruel tyrants. He also praised former President Bush for helping to bring Ethiopian Jews to Israel, as well as his determination to ensure that the Arab world recognizes Israel's right to exist in peace and security.
The Irish Senate has advanced a bill that would criminalize the importation or sale of goods produced in the Israeli heartland. The legislation calls for a fine of up to 250,000 euros or 5 years in jail. Israel's Minister of Public Security and Strategic Affairs spoke out against the measure, describing it as a disgrace infected with anti-Semitism. Gilad Erdan said the vote in Dublin has given a tailwind to contemptible boycott groups that have links with terrorist organizations and cynically use the term human rights for purposes of spreading hatred and deepening conflict.
The Dutch National Railway Company may finally pay reparations for its role in transferring Jews to death camps during World War II. The development follows mounting pressure from international organizations. 13 years ago, the company issued an apology for its involvement in the mass deportations, but it has so far refused to offer compensation despite having profited from its complicity in forcibly removing hundreds of thousands of Dutch Jews from their country. More than 70% of Holland's Jewish population was killed in the Holocaust. Most were shipped out of the Netherlands by train to their deaths in Nazi concentration camps.
The United States envoy to Israel has demanded that the Palestinian Authority release a dual American citizen it kidnapped and jailed for his role in the sale of land to Jews. Ambassador David Friedman called on the PA to free Issam Ekel, who has been held for 2 months after brokering the sale of an Arab home in the Old City of Jerusalem to Jews. The PA has outlawed all land sales to what it calls the enemy state and has made it a crime punishable by death. Recently, 2 men were sentenced to 15 years at hard labor in a Palestinian prison for their involvement in property sales to Jews. Ambassador Friedman stressed that Eckel's incarceration is antithetical to the values of the U.S. and to all who advocate the cause of peaceful coexistence. He demanded that the PA release Eckel immediately.
Tehran has begun shipping advanced weapons directly to Hezbollah in Beirut. The arms delivery was made by an Iranian airliner affiliated with the Revolutionary Guards to the terror group in Lebanon. This marks the first direct shipment between the two sides and signifies a major escalation by the Islamic Republic, which is intent upon strengthening its proxy armies in the Middle East. The cargo is believed to have contained sophisticated weapon systems that will be used by Hezbollah to facilitate the conversion of its stockpiles of rockets into precision-guided missiles.
2 Palestinian cousins have been arrested for planning chemical attacks in Lebanon and Italy. Italian officials announced they acted on a tip from Interpol and arrested a Palestinian man for plotting to poison the water supply on the island of Sardinia. The intelligence came from the interrogation of the suspect's cousin, who was arrested in September in Lebanon after attempting to taint the water supply of a military barracks. The Lebanese suspects reportedly admitted to planning a mass chemical attack in a foreign country with a partner. Italy's state anti-terror prosecutor said the suspect planned to use ricin or anthrax to poison the water supply in Macomer, as well as a military base in the area.
The Israeli government has approved an economic strategy to strengthen the resilience of Jewish communities on the Gaza border. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced the Knesset approval of a 700 million shekel allocation to improve the welfare of citizens in the area. Civilian communities in southern Israel have been hard hit by the Hamas terror group in Gaza, which has fired hundreds of rockets and burned thousands of acres of farmland and forests with airborne incendiary devices. Israeli Finance Minister Moshe Kahlon said that the nation has a responsibility and an obligation to the people who live in the region adjacent to the Gaza Strip, and that this major investment in the residents and their businesses underscores that commitment.
Israel is now part of an elite United Nations rescue unit. The International Search and Rescue Advisory Group recently sent a delegation to the Jewish state to administer a series of tests to Israel's Home Front Command in order to certify it as part of the organization's elite rescue forces. The drills, which lasted for 7 days, observed the performance of Israel's Home Front Command and the organization's 230 criteria, which set an international standard for disaster relief along with search and rescue. Israel's admission into this prestigious group will allow the Jewish state to participate in UN aid missions to disaster-stricken countries, even ones that do not hold diplomatic ties with Jerusalem. IDF spokesman Brigadier General Ronen Manolis said the certification is a great honor for the IDF and for Israel.
Israel has announced the opening of a shark observatory and learning center off the coast of Hadera. Local scientists discovered an intriguing phenomenon involving the annual migration of dozens of sharks to Israel's shoreline in the wintertime. The fish are attracted to hot water poured into the Mediterranean Sea by the Orot Rabin power plant, and more packs swim in each year to bathe and enjoy the temperate waves. Among the visiting species are dusky and sandbar sharks, both of which are at risk of extinction. The new observation center will be used to educate the public about conservation and the preservation of marine life.
Israeli archaeologists have discovered a ring that may have belonged to Pontius Pilate. The ancient seal was unearthed at King Herod's winter palace 50 years ago. It recently made headlines when archaeologists uncovered the name of the Roman prefect who ordered the trial and crucifixion of Jesus. The 2,000-year-old emblem was found along with hundreds of other artifacts in the late 1960s during an excavation by the Hebrew University of Jerusalem at Herod's desert fortress called Herodion. Just a few weeks ago, archaeologists cleaned the ring and deciphered an inscription in Greek that said, "Of Pilatus." Since then, the archaeological community has been debating the possibility that the ring could have belonged to the infamous governor that ruled over Judea during the time of Jesus. If so, it would be only the second artifact ever discovered that verifies the existence of the notorious Roman official described in the Christian Bible and by the historian Josephus. In 1961, archaeologists discovered the Pilate stone, a massive block engraved with 4 lines of text, which says, "Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea."
Biblical prophecy continues to be fulfilled in the land of Israel. Thousands of years ago, Isaiah prophesied that the barren deserts would bloom when God returns the people of Israel to their land. We're happy to report that today the deserts in southern Israel are bursting with colorful blossoms. And that's especially significant this year after the barrage of Hamas kite and balloon bombs launched into Israel that have burned thousands of acres of land. The first rains have now cleansed the earth and are beginning to replenish the soil. One tourism coordinator in the Gaza region, Levant Gansberg, said that the northern Negev is undergoing a drastic and exciting change from the black of the fires to green vegetation. She's invited the public to visit the south and to continue to pray for rain and for peace.
Thousands of Christians gathered in Bethlehem to watch the lighting of the great Christmas tree outside of the Church of the Nativity in Manger Square. Christmas has become a bittersweet occasion for Christians who were once the majority in the birthplace of Jesus and celebrated the holiday freely. But when the Palestinian Authority took control of the city in 1995, the Christians of Bethlehem began to suffer at the hands of their fellow Arabs and PA forces. Relentless oppression forced most Christians to leave the city. The few faithful that remain in Bethlehem say they are harassed, threatened, and constantly persecuted for their faith by the Muslim majority that has taken over their city.
The Jewish people are in the midst of celebrating Hanukkah, known as the Festival of Lights. This 8-day holiday commemorates a miracle God performed in Israel when the Greek Empire attempted to paganize the Jews by profaning the temple and outlawing Shabbat. In that day, a group of faithful Jews chose to fight for their freedom to worship the one true God, and in return, he was faithful and made the small Jewish army victorious over the mighty Greek Empire. The Maccabees entered Jerusalem, purified the temple, and reinstated the practice of Judaism in the land of Israel. Hanukkah is a celebration of the miracles that God performed in those days in order to restore his people to his covenant in his holy city. Tonight, Jews around the world will light Hanukkah candles and remember that God's light will shine from Jerusalem forever. We at Israel Now News would like to wish all of our viewers Chag Hanukkah Sameach.
Happy Hanukkah!
That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host Josh Reinstein and we're here in a beautiful sunny day on our rooftop studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Alan Tenenberg. He's the Chief Medical Officer here in Israel at Johnson & Johnson. Alan, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, great to be here.
You know, a lot of people don't know that Johnson & Johnson even has an office here in Israel. What exactly do they do here?
Well, we have about 1,000 employees in Israel spread out over 4 different offices. We work in a variety of areas of medical technology, have even acquired some Israeli companies over the years.
In Israel, we're known as the startup nation. How is that transfer over into the biotech world?
Well, that's certainly one of the reasons why a big company like Johnson & Johnson would be attracted to Israel. There's an incredible amount of technology, a incredible amount of innovation, and that's the type of resource that we'd like to tap into to help build our business.
Now, you're with Johnson & Johnson, but you have actually a unique role here in Israel. Can you tell us a little about that?
Well, I focus primarily on global public health issues in the developing world. I'm an infectious disease physician, and my job is really to work with governments all over the world, mostly in the developing world, on partnerships to strengthen health services in parts of the world where they're not very strong.
Why is that an important focus for Johnson & Johnson? Why would they want to reach out to some of these parts of the world where there isn't a lot of help?
Well, at Johnson & Johnson, and in my part of the company in particular, we believe that people who live in parts of the world like sub-Saharan Africa or Southeast Asia really deserve to have access to medical innovations at the same time as everyone else everywhere else in the world. And Johnson & Johnson has focused a lot of its time and resources into making sure that people in the developing world also have access to life-saving medications and treatments.
Israeli government and the Israeli people in general are dedicated to also going around the world and helping people, whether it be through infectious disease or natural disasters. We call it tikkun olam, fixing the world. Is that part and parcel with what Johnson & Johnson believe?
I think that's a great way of describing it, tikkun olam, and I should probably bring that phrase back into the company and explain to them what it means, because in reality we're already doing it.
And what kind of cooperation, if any, do you have with some of the other initiatives that's happening already from the government of Israel to these areas around the world?
So far, that's something that we're really working on building. Johnson & Johnson is interested in working in partnerships with governments all over the world, and we really do believe that in order to get those greatly needed medical care and services to the developing world, we have to work together with governments. Working with governments directly, for example, in African countries is incredibly important, but partnering with governments in Israel that also have an interest in building ties in those parts of the world is a way that we can further our work.
We're seeing an incredible relationship building going on between governments in Africa and Israel. Our Prime Minister has been to Africa in the last 18 months 3 times. Before that, the 50 years before that, not even once. Is that helping the work that you're doing, or is it really relevant to what you're doing?
It probably isn't connected just yet, except for the fact that when I'm traveling in Africa and I tell health ministers or people that I work for Johnson & Johnson and I live in Israel, I think they get excited about both parts.
You know what's interesting is that you actually do this and you're based in Israel. Why did Johnson & Johnson want you based in Israel to do this job where, in countries where they don't have this type of medical technology?
Well, I think the most important reason for that is Israel, in many respects, geographically, is at the center of the world. I can make it to sub-Saharan Africa in a few hours. Many of the people that I partner with are government officials in Europe. And even last week, I had to travel to Indonesia on business. And making it to all of these different locations is a lot easier from Israel than it was from New York City. In addition to that, I have a lot of family here, and it made a lot of sense for me to live here.
There's a big thawing going on between Israel and some of the moderate Arab countries around here. Will that have an effect on your work? Will you start maybe working in more Arab countries as well?
I think that it could. I already have traveled to places like Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And as I mentioned just last week, I was in Indonesia. I think that the closer the ties are between Israel and those countries, the easier it will become for me to do my work in those countries as well.
There's a sense that Israel is a powerhouse in medical technology and innovation. From you being here and seeing some of the new technologies coming out, can you say that that's true?
I would say that that is absolutely true. I think that certainly for anyone reading the news or reading the medical news, certainly you hear about technological innovations in biomedicine that are coming out of Israel. But if you work in the field like I do, you really do have a chance to see it every day.
Yeah, we hear a lot about now medical tourism. A lot of people are coming from the world to get medical care here. How does that impact the medical community here in Israel?
I don't work so much in the clinical medical practice here in Israel, but certainly if people are coming from other parts of the world to get health care here in Israel, it certainly says a tremendous amount about the quality and the advancement of care here in this country.
Looking ahead in your field, what are some of the new technological advances in medicine that you think is going to revolutionize the work that you're doing?
So the work that I do is mostly focused on the developing world, and there are many diseases even today that are simply not addressed to the degree that they need to be addressed. For example, diseases like multi-drug resistant tuberculosis still kill millions of people every year, but primarily in poorer parts of the world where there isn't as much investment in cure, treatment, or prevention. And that's really the work that I do and where I'm focused.
There's a lot of news coming out in Israel about a measles outbreak, that some people in the ultra-Orthodox community were not getting vaccinations. Do you see this as a real threat in your professional opinion, or is it something that is, media sensationalized and will go away in the next few weeks?
It's absolutely a threat. It absolutely is a risk. It's not limited only to Israel, though. There are declining rates of immunization for completely preventable diseases in many parts of the world. Certainly having over 1,000 cases of measles here in Israel and sadly one death of an infant just about a week ago is something that really seriously needs to be addressed because it places really large segments of the population at risk, including small children who are too young to be immunized, or the elderly or the ill who also can't be immunized.
Why are you seeing around the world people not doing the immunizations? Where's that coming from?
I think part of it is that people don't remember what these diseases look like. We have grown up in a generation or a couple of generations who don't remember what it's like to get measles or to get polio or even to get a disease like smallpox. So after a while, the risk of these diseases and the health threat really become minimized as people don't recall how serious and how life-threatening they can be.
There are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
I would say that Israel is a center of biomedical innovation, and if you're looking to invest in biotechnology or you're looking to develop opportunities in biotechnology, this is definitely a place where you should be looking.
Thank you, Alan, for coming on the show, and thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, the return to Zion with Karen Hayesod.
Shalom and welcome to the Return to Zion with Keren Hayesod. I'm Greg Maisel, the Director General of Keren Hayesod, United Israel Appeal, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. Keren Hayesod is responsible for bringing home tens of thousands of new immigrants, Olim, every year. Every story is unique. Enjoy as we hear one of these incredible success stories.
When the parents of 8-year-old Robert Uman decided in 1938 that their family must leave Germany for a new beginning in New York, little did they know that it would save their lives. Remarkably, the decision also laid the foundations for their son to flourish in the first Jewish state in 2 millennia, built with the determination of institutions such as Keren Hayesod. Here, Robert Uman would become an Israeli hero who would change the world of mathematics. By 1938, the dark clouds had gathered over Germany. Jews had been ousted from every facet of public life. They had become persecuted outcasts. Outright violence against Jews was common. The Uman family fled for the United States just 2 weeks before the infamous Kristallnacht pogrom. They were spared the full horrors of Nazism, which would soon unfold. In their new home, Robert Uman's parents struggled to make a living, but Uman grew up a proud Jew, a scholar of the Hebrew Bible. At the same time, Robert soon emerged as a gifted mathematician. In 1955, he received a prestigious PhD in mathematics from MIT. By this time, thousands of miles away, the impossible dream had become a reality. The State of Israel was born. From the ashes of the Holocaust, an ancient nation returned to its biblical home. With the help of Keren Hayesod and its supporters, the Jewish people built its first independent state in 2,000 years. Robert Uman simply could not resist the pull of history.
Israel is a place where Jews have looked to this for centuries, and this is our fulfillment. So the news that we are gradually getting to be stronger and stronger in Israel vis-a-vis the diaspora, number-wise, that's good news. That's wonderful news.
Uman made his new home in the land of his forefathers, the land of Israel. As Jeremiah had predicted, your children shall return to their borders. Uman's outstanding intellectual ability did not go unnoticed, and he immediately joined the mathematics faculty at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. He has been there ever since. Over the decades, Uman's reputation blossomed into one of the world's outstanding mathematicians. Prestigious prizes and professorships followed. But in 2005, Robert Uman received the ultimate award, the Nobel Prize. Almost overnight, Uman became a household name. His success demonstrated Israel's important contribution to the world. It showcased the Hebrew University, a world-class institution built with the help of Keren Hayesod. The small boy who fled Germany had shown that the Jewish people had triumphed. Uman was an Israeli hero. But despite the accolades, Uman remains first and foremost a proud Jew, even when the Nobel Prize is on offer. With the Nobel Awards ceremony scheduled just minutes after the Jewish Sabbath ended, Uman insisted on first completing his prayers before hurrying to take a seat just 90 seconds before the King of Sweden's arrival. Uman's remarkable life story is a powerful symbol of a proud nation reborn, a people that has never lost faith. And it is a reminder of Zechariah's prophecy, "Not by might and not by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord." Now is your opportunity to continue this holy legacy by assisting additional Jews to make a new life in the land of their forefathers.
Join Keren HaYesod in celebrating Israel's 70th anniversary by donating only $70 a month to help fund Aliyah. Let's bless Israel together.
To donate and get information, call us at 1-800-505-1665 or visit our website at www.khisrael.org.
The sanctions reimposed by the Trump administration on Iran on November 5th are a godsend to the state of Israel, to the Middle East, and the world. Understand that under the Iran nuclear deal, the vicious Iranian regime received tens upon tens of billions of dollars in sanctions relief. Now, that money was designed to moderate the Iranian regime, but just the opposite happened. The Iranian regime used that money to conquer large swaths of the Middle East, from Iraq, from Yemen, across Syria into Lebanon. It used that money to kill hundreds of thousands of people in our region. It used that money to build intercontinental ballistic missiles whose only purpose is to carry nuclear warheads. It used it to advance centrifuges that can enrich uranium at 4 times the rate, so that when the nuclear deal expires in another 7 years, Iran can create not one, but hundreds of nuclear weapons. And that money was used to threaten Israel with destruction. What can be a worse deal? What could be a more vicious and destructive deal? And so Israel was deeply grateful for the actions of President Trump in reimposing sanctions and actually ratcheting up the sanctions that had existed under the Obama administration. These sanctions are harder on Iran. The idea will be to bring Iran literally to its knees, to the table, if it wants to renegotiate an agreement. But the conditions sent by the administration that Iran must cease all support for terror. It must get out of Syria and Lebanon. It must stop threatening Israel with destruction. These are essential conditions which we strongly support here in Israel. The sanctions are a great boon to America's security, but not only to America's security, to our region, to our state, and to the entire world. And for that, the entire world, rather than opposing the sanctions, should always be deeply grateful.
That's going to do it for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.